All right. Says we're going live. Anybody watching the recording, hang out for a minute while we do a little housekeeping. Got to let Zoom and YouTube catch up and then share some links. All right, got the link. Nice. All right, welcome everybody. Today is Wednesday, May 31st, 2023. I am Chris Troutner. I helped found the PSF. I run fullstack.cash, which is blockchain as a service, as well as consulting and software development services. I'm joined with Aaron Shoemaker. Aaron, you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, my name is Aaron Shoemaker. I've been involved with the PSF for a long time now, and it's the NFT 360 metaverse type of space. And now I'm moving into the scheduling and availability right now. It's the project I'm working on, and hope to bring some of that to the cryptocurrency sphere once I get that figured out.
Nice. Man, I'm getting notice that my internet is unstable, so hopefully I don't drop out. But let's see about um, the agenda today. So as always, our agendas are filed on GitHub under the Permissionless Software Foundation GitHub group in a repository called TSC for Technical Steering Committee. And we file our agendas as issues. If anybody wants to go back and review the links, this is issue number 55. Scope of these meetings, cover these projects here, and make this a little bigger. So kind of a short uh, agenda today. I'll just go through these things, and as always, interrupt me if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, I'll just get through this, and then we'll have a roundtable discussion on current topics. So in terms of governance updates, I'm not sure if we covered this in our last meeting or not, but cashstack.info, which is our documentation site for the Permissionless Software Foundation, has a new chapter called IPFS BCH Wallet Consumer. This is the middleware for if you're a front-end developer, this is the only back-end software you need to run in order to get a REST API that, like, if you're building a wallet or some other app that uses the Bitcoin Cash blockchain, it can talk to this and get access to the global backend, which has the full node and the indexers. And there's a video walkthrough here. So wanted to call that out. Yeah, and the video also covers how to control that application with our command line wallet, the PSF BCH wallet. So it's pretty handy. It's very flexible. It's highly censorship resistant and reduces a lot of costs for developers and communities of users. And I'm planning on using this infrastructure in the coming year to start local currency here on Decatur. And I know we talked about that in the previous meeting. Just going to resize this window so it doesn't interfere with my Zoom controls. So some bugs were found and fixed in our software. Minimal SLP wallet. This is a JavaScript library that powers wallet.fullstack.cash. Pretty handy, high-level wallet that devs can use to quickly get started and build applications. There was a bug in the get token data function, which gets to mutable and immutable data around SLP tokens. And the root cause was actually in BCH API. I had recently pushed a change that changed the default ordering. So the way the token data lookup happens is it looks at the transaction history of an address. So when I changed that order, it was actually looking at like the oldest record first rather than the newest record first. And this was causing it to like find old mutable data. And I noticed this Sahid is a frequent Bitcoin Cash developer. He had tried to buy one of our governance tokens on the DEX, and he was having issues. And so when I dug into it, that's how I found this bug. So shout out to Sahid. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, and it's fixed now. There's also a new get token balance function that was added to Minimal SLP wallet. Let me see. I think I got that here. Yeah, get token balance. So it's in the README if you want a code example. So there was already a list tokens command, and this would list all the SLP tokens held by an address and their quantities. But if you want to just if you are only interested in one specific token and you just want the balance, this is a more convenient call. So you give it an address and you give it a token ID, and it just returns a number, which is the balance of those tokens held by that address. So that's handy for a lot of applications. And then I've been working on the pay to write database. That's been my focus lately. And what I've been trying to do is develop this pre-burn ticket idea. So anybody who's used our NFT creator to create an NFT, or played around with local trade list, our prototype for helping neighbors trade with neighbors, they know that it's a pretty slow process. It can take like 10 to 15 minutes to generate an NFT. And a big part of that time is just communicating with the pay to write database and going through the ritual of burning a specified number of PSF tokens in order to write to the database. And so this pre-burn ticket idea is the idea that the pay to write database can pre-burn these tickets and have an inventory of them, so that when you need to write to the database, you can just buy one of these pre-burn tickets. And so it's a much faster process because it's that burning that takes a lot of time. And so I've been playing with it. This feature is almost done. In fact, that leads to the second bullet point. I've created the P2WDB is an NPM library. So that's like the client library that you would use. It has a bunch of convenient calls to call to the pay to write database and either read data or write data. And so that has a new create ticket function. And let me see if I have that pulled up. Yeah, create ticket function. So it lets you here's example code here, and basically you instantiate the write library, and then you call the create ticket app, and that generates a pre-burned ticket. It doesn't actually write to the database yet. That's the next step for me. I just need to integrate these two and make sure that everything's backwards compatible. And the whole process should just be, like I said, it should be backwards compatible, and it should just be a lot faster.
So
And
essentially, that means that a token's already been burned, so we can move through the process a lot faster without verifying.
Yeah, so looking into this process, I thought it was exclusively the token burning that was slow, but there's actually two slow. So just at a high level, what happens is the client calls an instance of the pay to write database, and it says, I want to write something and I want to pay in Bitcoin Cash because I don't have any PSF tokens, because most clients won't. And so then the pay to write database looks up the current price of Bitcoin Cash, calculates the price of how much Bitcoin Cash it would take to pay for a write to the database in PSF tokens. And so that takes time to look up the price, and then give the user an address for them to pay. And then so looking up the price is the first bottleneck, and that's really easy to solve with caching. That's probably the next thing I'm going to do. And then the user has to pay for the write, and so that takes a minute. And I don't think there's really any good way to speed that up. And then the pay to write database will burn the ticket. It will create a ticket or burn some PSF tokens to pay for the write on behalf of the client, and that's the big time suck. That's the big bottleneck, and that's what we're eliminating with this pre-burn ticket. So when the pay to write database starts up, it'll look at its inventory of tickets, and if right now I have it set to like 2 or 3. And so if it doesn't have any, it'll generate these tickets like right at startup before it's interacting with the user. So out of band of that whole workflow. And so then when the client software actually makes this call now, rather than the database burning the ticket on the fly, it can just grab one out of its inventory real quick and pass it on to the user and say, here you go, here's a ticket you can use. And so that it's a significant speed up. And so once I get this done and make sure that I haven't broken backwards compatibility, I want to circle back around and attack that part where it looks up the price of Bitcoin Cash, because that takes a few seconds. And so if I just had the price cached and updated it like every 5 minutes or something, then that would speed up that end too. So I'm right now it's like a 10 to 15 minute process from
Yeah.
start to finish, and so I'm hoping I can reduce that down to 5 minutes or less, and hopefully 2 minutes or less. It'd be a big improvement to the user experience.
Yeah, I just downloaded the PagerDuty database and I'm looking at the read function here. So
Yeah, the reads are really fast. That's the thing. If all you want to do is consume information, it's very fast. And so that's nice. Like for instance, the like looking up mutable token data, or I'm working with Launchpad IP, and they're building an NFT generator. So they're probably the biggest consumers of the PagerDuty database right now, and so they're feeling this pain very acutely, and their users are going to feel it very acutely. So that's one motivation for speeding this up. So that's pretty much the agenda. Like I said, it's a short one today, and I was hoping to have Sam on to talk about cash tokens. I've seen him in the Telegram channels, uh, just participating and playing around with.
oh, you froze up there for a second.
Oh, did I? Okay,
Yeah.
thanks for letting me know. Yeah, I was hoping to have Sam on to talk about cash tokens, but he's not able to make it. And my understanding is that there is Electron Cash Wallet that can be used for making cash tokens. There's also mainnet.js, a JavaScript library for creating cash tokens, and I know he's played with both of them. So I was hoping he'd give us a little demo, but he wasn't able to make it. Have you played with cash tokens at all, Aaron, or anybody
I
else
have
on this
not,
call?
but Lightswarm 124 says they've been playing with it in the chat. Chat says I've been playing with cash tokens and cash script to help lock them up. I think you froze again. You really need the correct config to not burn the vout 0. All right. Well, welcome to the solo PSF. Chris disappeared there for a second. You
Oh, I'm
back?
back. Good, good.
Yeah, Jerry says he's been playing with cache tokens and cache scripts to help lock them up. You really need to correct the config to not burn the vout equals 0. Sorry, I'm outside. It's a bit noisy.
Oh, yeah. So he's talking the V out 0. He's talking about the BCMR, the basically the metadata. You can accidentally burn that when you send it to, well, if you change it, yeah, you can't. If you try and generate a transaction with an op return, then it'll burn in that first output. It'll burn that BCMR metadata. So it's, yeah, kind of an interesting problem with that. And I haven't heard too many people doing it. I am really, more than cash tokens, I'm watching how this BCMR standard unfolds, because we could replace the way we do it, which is address based, with this BCMR protocol, which is UTXO based, with and apply them to SLP tokens.
So, address base as opposed to UTXO base. So we wouldn't be looking at people's addresses. We'd be looking at the actual UTXOs that are in wallets.
Yeah. So when there was this big problem with token icons, and that it was like a problem for like 2 years, and nobody was solving it. So I decided to take a crack at it, and we created a PSF specification around this, and Launchpad IP funded the development of it. And so this is how, like, if you go to the DEX or you go to wallet.fullstack.cash and you get a token with a token icon, it's going to use this address-based way of doing things, where the metadata that you when you create the token, you pick a Bitcoin Cash address to represent your metadata, like the token icon and other information. And the way the information gets updated is by looking at the transaction history of that address. And this scales really well because you can update the metadata as many times as you want, but when someone needs to consume that data, they only have to make one or two API address calls because they just have to get the transaction hit, like the latest, handful of transactions for that address, and just start going down them until they find one that matches. And so it's a very fast process. This BCMR technique it's much like the minting baton of an SLP token, where you're always looking at the V out equals 0, so the first output of a transaction. And so if you change the metadata, you make a transaction to spend that UTXO, and so as a consumer, in order to consume that data, you have to start with the very first transaction and go down the chain. And so this can be an unlimited number of API calls, so it can be really slow. So you really need an indexer for this, in order to do it, with a good user experience.
So,
And go ahead.
so the um, first of all, Jerry's saying, so if you mess up the config, the V out would be used for a regular transaction. And if you're trying to run the code again, it generally shows an error message saying it does not find an appropriate V out equals 0. Fungible tokens also look for V out equals 0 for token genesis. Pretty sure NFT genesis is the same. So it sounds like if you don't have the config right, your wallet can make a mistake and actually spend that UTXO in a transaction. Is that?
Yeah, yeah. So if you
And then it's
happen
gone.
to make a transaction with an opperturn in that first output, it'll burn that BCMR uh, baton essentially. And so like now the token just doesn't, it's unclear whether it just wouldn't have any metadata anymore, or if you just couldn't update the metadata anymore, you'd be stuck at whatever that latest update was, the last one was.
So it either you're stuck as the token, you can't update it, or would it just revert back to a UTXO and like just be a plain UTXO?
Yeah, yeah. The actual Bitcoin Cash is, it just becomes regular Bitcoin Cash at that point. It's no longer like a colored UTXO.
Oh, so I see. I'm understanding this now. I didn't get this at first. It's kind of like the coin protocol of like 2014 with Bitcoin, where
Yeah, I mean, this is how SLP works,
yeah,
is they're just colored UTXOs.
yeah,
Um, and this is how you can burn SLP tokens. It's like the same thing.
it's just
Um,
writing it in a different way.
yeah,
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 okay.
exactly. So they've got minor validated tokens that can't be burned, but now they have the same problem with the metadata. You can burn that.
Oh, I get it. I get it. So,
And for some reason, I can't see Jerry's chat here in Zoom. I don't know if he's chatting to you directly, because you can do that pretty easily by accident. But anyways, I can't see the chats. I have the chat pulled up, but I don't see.
Yeah, I can see his. So that's strange.
I
That is
see a
strange.
test, and Jerry says it's to everyone.
Yeah. Okay, everyone, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for jumping on, Jerry. This is good information.
Yeah, yeah. You're always a wealth of information, Jerry. Appreciate when you contribute.
So yeah,
Uh,
that makes sense about the cash tokens and how you could burn that ability to create the metadata. So yeah,
a big advantage of the BCMR is that you can pass ownership of the metadata. Like if I send the UTXO to you, then you have the baton and you can update the metadata, and I can no longer do that. And that's a big advantage versus this address based format that we use. Like I can give you the private key so you can update the data, but I can't prove to you that I no longer have the private key.
yeah, that's
Um,
true.
so that can be a problem.
That's true.
And so that would be one good reason for us to adopt this. So this is why I'm watching the BCMR, because if they do a good job developing infrastructure around it, it might make more sense. Because part of the other reason why it's hard to criticize, or I don't know, easier to criticize depending on your perspective, is that the very first transaction for this metadata is on chain, but then in that transaction you specify whether the data is coming from IPFS or an HTTP server or on chain. And so any wallet that's trying to consume this information needs to be able to deal with all three options. And that didn't seem like a good design to me at first, but the proof will be in the pudding. This is what I mean. Like, I'm starting to see more development, like in mainnet.js, which I want to talk about here in a minute. They're starting to, some people are building indexers. Some people are, following the chain and just eating that API cost to do that. Some people are setting up HTTP servers. So you don't even look for the on-chain. You just trust that the HTTP server is giving you the right data. So it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out and like which of those three options becomes the more popular, de facto way of doing things.
Interesting. Yeah. So basically the choices is IPFS, on-chain, and what was the third one you mentioned?
Just a normal web server.
Yeah, clear web server.
Yeah.
Wow. Clear web servers obviously got the problem that all NFTs have had, where can be changed.
The server goes down and your metadata
server goes down, reg pulled, whatever. IPFS, you have a pinning issue there. The one thing I think a lot of people don't get about IPFS, if people don't know too much about it, a lot of people are like, it's permanent. Well, it's only permanent if somebody pins it. And, the actual hash of the file is permanent. That file will hash the same way. So if you upload it again, it will come back. But if you're not pinning it, it's gone. And then, we're paying these pinning services, but then, we've discussed in the past, you don't know that these pinning services are going to be around forever. And you also don't know where they're locating their servers. So
are you saying that if you re-upload one because it has the same hash, it'll get the same CID?
Yes.
Yeah, as long as the file hasn't changed at all, like one bit will change the hash, but
the same CID will be generated, so a reconnected won't. Oh, I didn't know that. That's
so like you could essentially do if you had, like, say you hypothetically had a piece of information that you wanted to be available for certain times.
Right. No, I totally get what you're saying. It's interesting. You could actually pull it down so it's private and then put it back up when you needed to or something.
Yeah. The only problem is you can't control other people's garbage collection. So somebody could be like, I'm going to send my garbage collection to 7 days. So as long as it's out there and people are looking for that CID, it will hop through the network and find it. So and then it'll pull it down to them, and then that'll be available usually for 24 hours. That's the default configuration. But somebody can always go into their configuration and say, I don't want to garbage collect for a week or 2 weeks, So then it wouldn't necessarily be something that you're like, I want to exclusively share this and pull it down. Like, it wouldn't work that way. But like, say your pinning service went down and you had an NFT and it's gone, you could fire up your own IPFS node or desktop client for those who aren't as inclined through the command line, and you could pin that and just leave that running, and then it would eventually propagate again through the network.
Cool.
Yeah, speaking of pinning services, that's been a real thorn in my side lately. So another big motivation for doing this pre-burn ticket feature is that it would also speed up our pinning service, our pinning cluster that runs on top of the pay-to-write database. And I've been helping Launchpad IP with their NFT creator, and we decided to use the pay-to-write database pinning cluster service, but also as redundancy, use Filecoin through web3.storage. And man, that service has just been nothing but a headache. They go down. Yeah, they go down a lot. And when they are up, what we're seeing now is we'll pin something and then it won't be available for a long time, like over an hour. Like if I specifically call their API and pin a piece of content and I get a CID back, And then I have another IPFS node over here, and I do, IPFS get with that CID. It can't find it. It just hangs out forever, even though it's
Wow.
fully connected. And but and so that's been a headache. So we've been leaning a lot harder onto the pay to write pinning cluster, because that's like instance. Like once you get the CID back and it says it's pinned, and every IPFS node in the world can see that data, and it's there, and it'll hold that data for a year.
I wonder if they're doing another process where they're using the CID as a reference to something on a server.
Well, I mean, what they used to do is they would pin it immediately, and then it would take like a half hour for them to get it into a Filecoin deal and actually mine it into the Filecoin blockchain. And this is all done through PowerGate. That's the software that's used to do this process. And it used to be great, but it doesn't seem like they do that anymore. Like they don't make the IPFS immediately available, or they don't make the file immediately available on IPFS. They're just trying to push it to Filecoin, and then I don't know how you're actually supposed to get it back at some point. Like I'm still haven't figured that part out, but and so it's just the point here. The broad point is like not all pinning services are made the same. Like again, circling back to this BCMR, mainnet.js, which is becoming quickly the go-to library for these cash tokens. They have their own pinning service, but it's just a private pinning service that one guy's running on one computer, and you pay Bitcoin Cash to pin it, and that's fine. But I don't think these devs who are making these tokens like realize that if that one server goes down, then there's nobody pinning that content anymore. Which is why it was so important to me to build a decentralized pinning cluster, that so that there's redundancy baked into the system and an incentive system to get people to keep the pin nodes up. So
yeah, I think it's a big underlying issue that a lot of people don't realize until they look into the protocol and they understand what's going on with IPFS. There's a lot of people out there, they just think pinning is permanence, and whether it's Arweave or it's IPFS. And I think the pay to write database is an excellent way for pinning. And I think, eventually when I have time, I'd like to revisit a collective kind of pinning service that's kind of like file sharing, but you could get rewarded through tokens like an SLP token or something like that. But there's stuff that you'd have to do there, like being able to monitor uptime and stuff like that, because you don't want to just reward people for running a node for 30 minutes every day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I haven't done a good job of communicating this, but once I get this pre-burn feature completed, that'll make the pinning stuff to our pinning cluster like a much better experience. And so then I'm going to circle back around, and we'll have the metrics, monitoring all the pay to write database instances and all the cache stack instances, and writing that stuff to the database, once or twice a day. And then that'll tee us up we'll have everything we need at that point to pay bounties for people, to incentivize people to run pinning cluster nodes and cache stack nodes. And so that'll be so we're probably two steps away from that. It's a 3-step process, and we're on step 1.
Jerry says, to be honest, haven't looked at the BCMR yet. libauth doesn't play well with React Native, it seems. Crap ton of Webpack config.
Yeah, I've seen other people banging their head against that too. They're Salim, who is doing the Token Explorer. He was running up against that too, because libauth is compiled as a WASM, and then to try and like bring that back into a Webpack is
you might want to, Jerry. I know Next has their alpha for their competitor to Webpack. You might want to check them out. It's supposed to be faster and more compatible, and so that might help you out. I forget what that one's called. Hold on, I'll just look at it real quick.
You're talking about Next.js?
Yeah, Next.js, Vercel. Like they've just put it out. Let's see here. Give me a second. I was just at their blog and then oh,
Well, while you're looking that up, just one topic I wanted to point out is I've been in so mainnet.js is a JavaScript library. It's very similar to BCH.js or minimal SLP wallet. And they are talking about dropping support for SLP tokens. And so I just let them know, like, well, we're going to support them for the near future. So if anybody wants to continue to use SLP tokens, BCH.js and minimal SLP wallet will be, I think, the only library that still supports them and still has like example code on how to create tokens and send them and update mutable data and all that good stuff. And wallet.fullstack.cache is built on that. So that'll continue to be a wallet that works with SLP tokens for the foreseeable future.
it is TurboPack. That's the name of it. They're new. It's supposed to be a lot faster. It's in beta right now. And then I think it's an alternative to, I think Veet is the other one that's out there, but TurboPack's supposed to be faster. Yeah, but so Jerry, you might want to look into that. It's supposed to, take away some of the headache of Webpack.
So who's maintaining mainnet.js?
Pat. That's the only name I know him by. Yeah, okay. Pat at mainnet.
Is that the main support for cache tokens? I mean, are there any other libraries like that? Or is that right now the only one that's really, I don't know if Software Verde is working on something or.
As far as I know, I mean, you can use Electron Cache if you want like a graphical wallet to work with cache tokens. And then mainnet.js is largely a wrapper for libauth. And those are the two libraries for working with cache tokens. And so that seems to be like, if you're a developer, a JavaScript developer, that mainnet.js is the library to use to work with cache tokens or build an app around cache tokens. That's what the Token Explorer is using.
Okay. Jerry says Veet and Parcel. Those are the other ones for anybody that's interested. But yeah, I think a lot of people use chaingraph.cache to list cache tokens. Looking into cache token modification, it just seems to add another parameter into the transaction field. Not sure how hard it is to implement.
Mm-hmm. Well, changing topics, I wanted to see what you guys thought of Fedimint, and I'll explain it if you haven't heard. Have you guys heard of it, or do you know what Fedimint is?
I've heard of it, but I would like to hear your take on it.
Yeah, so the What Bitcoin Did podcast recently had the head guy there on it. So it's he has a super weird name. I'm not gonna be able to pronounce it. But so it's on the BTC chain and it runs on Lightning. So it's a Lightning based thing, and it's written in Rust, which is one reason I haven't really dove into it because I don't know Rust. But it's community custody. What they're really pushing it, the narrative has changed a bit, and I really liked like the most recent narrative change because they're really focusing on it as like an alternative to custodial services. Like right now you have self-custody or you have a custodial service like Coinbase, and there's not really like a third option,
and all of them seem to be moving toward custodial, like Strike and everything. You see everyone just seems like they're going that way.
Yeah, because Lightning is so obtuse and difficult to operate that it's just not very practical for individuals to do it.
What?
Yeah.
That's a hot take.
And so this is why I'm really intrigued by this approach that Fedimint is doing. They're trying to be like this third option, and they're calling it community custody, where
do you have a link?
Yeah, let me pull that up. In fact, yeah, I'll just share my screen because that'll do a better job of me sharing these ideas. Yeah, so it's fedimint.org.
Okay, there we go. I thought it was FETTY.
Yeah, and what is the yeah, Obi Nwasu. He's the guy who was just recently interviewed on what Bitcoin did. So if people prefer to consume their information that way, it's a good intro. But essentially, what you set up is like at least three what's the word they use uh like elders, or basically like three people in your community that have like a high social cost to not do what they say they're going to do, which is run one of these lightning nodes. So let's say you have three, and yeah, here we go. A community custody platform, that's what they're calling it. But essentially, yeah, there's a video here if people want to go into it. I'm just seeing if they have a good flow chart. Guardians, that's what they're calling. They're calling them guardians. And these are all super busy. So like, let me just see if I can explain this better than a flow chart, because it's actually a pretty simple concept. You have these guardians. So let's say you have three of them. So like the three of us, each one of us agree to run a lightning node. And part of the problem with lightning is you have to always be online. That's one of the big issues with lightning nodes.
Right.
And if you're not online and a transaction comes through, then you can kind of get your funds stolen or
Right.
force closed. There's all these sort of bad things that can happen if you're not online all the time. And so the purpose of having like at least three guardians, that way one of them can go offline and the other two are still there to act as watchtowers and keep the channels open and make sure everything's like working as it's supposed to. And so by having redundant lightning nodes, that solves that problem. And that's a big problem in lightning. It's a big problem for the usability of lightning. And then the other thing that's kind of cool about it is, so you have a community, and let's say a new member wants to join the community, and they can deposit BTC Lightning with the community, and then we mint essentially a token, but it still represents BTC, but it circulates within our community. So they're generating like a local community currency. It's still BTC and it still runs over Lightning, but now it has like much improved privacy. There's no way to track this new type of BTC Lightning coin that's flowing around. And
Oh,
it's
it's like a
called
lightning token. Like it's
it is. Yeah,
Interesting.
it's still BTC. It's not like another denomination. It's not like a PSF token or
right.
a stable coin. It's still BTC Lightning. Like it's one for one. It's just gained like improved privacy features using Chaumian eCash. Yeah, Chom's eCash. And so this is, Chom was one of the guys that was cited in the original Bitcoin white paper. He's like 90 years old now, and but still alive, and he's still an awesome guy, still a huge cypherpunk. But he came up with this super private monetary system like back in the 80s, and it just never really like found an application. And so this is the big. So the Fedimint solves two big problems. One, it solves this watchtower issue with Lightning,
It gets the
and
Jehovah's Witnesses out of the game here. Just
kind
kidding.
of and it makes the transactions like way more private, and that the as long as you're using, and then because that's kind of a pain in the ass to like have your token, your Bitcoin, like isolated to this community that could be pretty small. A member of the community can set up essentially like an on-the-fly exchange. So if you need to just send a Lightning payment to somebody and all you have is the local community currency, it can route through this member of your community that'll on the fly convert them to BTC Lightning and make the payment for you. And they do that at a small fee. So they try and reduce that friction as well.
So it looks like it gives a third option from fully custodial and fully on chain. There's some idea of a third option right now, because I think this might be the very first one that really sounds like a third option that is reasonable. I mean,
Right.
this is a big issue because there's no way BTC scales on chain, right? There's no way.
Yeah.
And Lightning is all custodial. I mean, I've stood up Lightning networks before, and I barely put like a 0.001 on there because I'm afraid of it dying, right?
Right.
So any third option, even as long as you're, I mean, who knows about these guardians, right? There's still
Mhm.
obviously some question there, but I'd like the fact that there is something.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of there are no solutions, there's only trade-offs. So yeah, I like the way they're thinking about it. I like the trade-offs they're making in the sense it's like, well, we can gain all these benefits, but the trade-off we have to make is this guardian scheme. Like you have to trust somebody. So let's pick people in the community, that you're pretty sure you can trust. So I like that it's going back to the roots, and I've talked a lot about community currencies. So I could see this working. I don't,
Sounds a bit like a trust merchant.
yeah, it sounds a lot like a trust merchant. Yeah, that's the thing. Once you have this sort of framework established, there's a lot of other things you could do with it. It tees you up for things like trust merchants. So yeah, it's an interesting idea. I've tried to run my own Lightning node unsuccessfully. It's a challenge, and even if you do, these whole watchtower things are a big problem. And so taking that away with this Fediment scheme is pretty interesting. So I haven't run any of the software yet. But I thought I'd mention it to you guys. I think it's just something we should keep an eye on and see how it develops. I like the trajectory that they're on.
Well, what is interesting to me is that because Lightning is being like accepted more and more by maximalists. I mean, this feels like the big issue is that we are not allowing for the fact that everybody is just adopting a custodial solution everywhere all the time at this moment. Like
Mhm.
very few people are doing their own self-custody because on-chain is not private and is super expensive. Well, $2 a transaction is not, the median price is right now about $2 on BTC. So it's not horrible,
Oh,
but there's no way you can do peer-to-peer cash, especially the micropayments. So
yeah.
finding anything, boy, it feels like this is a big deal to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and my take on that is like BTC and the Lightning Network still seems way over engineered and over complicated, but they have the network effects. And if you're being objective, like network effects are the most powerful thing of any coin. There's no getting around it. There's no you can have a shit coin as long as you have network effects. Like
Yep.
your technology doesn't matter nearly as much as your network effects.
Yeah, that's true. Network effects are huge. And I think another place where sometimes we fail in the cryptocurrency space is our strategy for mass adoption tends to be consumer led, and where I think a lot of the pain points crypto actually solves is business, like B2B stuff.
Mhm.
Being a business owner and like say you deposit a large check, the bank puts a hold on it for 5 days or 6 days, and you can't spend that, or you want to send money to um, uh, another country. There's all these like say you're a company and you've got factories all over, you need to send money from the United States to say Brazil. And the steps that you have to go through to do that is really, really painful. And then even then, sometimes the bank's like, nope, sorry. Even if you're a huge company and you've been dealing with it for a long time. Whereas crypto would make it so that you're just like, here you go, Brazil. There's the money, but there's no entry point and exit point for that if on the
Yeah.
business side, if that makes sense. But that's a use case where businesses would readily adopt that, and we're not totally looking there. And like BCH would be perfect for that because it's so cheap. So if there's
Hmm.
an entry point for a business to say, I'm going to take my dollars, now it's BCH, send it to Brazil, now it's whatever their currency is, and the factory can use it to buy supplies.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I've sped that up by like 4 or 5 days. Because not
Yeah,
even
but
kidding when
that's where
you
the network effects come
yeah.
in because it's like you can have like I mean there are so many really good technologies, but you got like people won't use it because other people aren't using it, kind of a thing.
Well, and I think part of the problem though is we have focused so much on getting grandma and mom and my friends and everybody like that in on using cryptocurrency when there's this giant utility for businesses
Hmm.
and cross country currency transfers,
Hmm.
which is just an everyday business thing.
Right.
It's
Right.
literally taking, I've got a supplier in China, I need to send them money. It's going to take
Well,
5 days to send them money when with crypto, it's done.
yeah. Well, perfect example are the developers that I hire in South America and Argentina and especially in Venezuela. Like, there is no other way for me to get money to them. Like, there's
Right.
no wire
Yeah.
transfer won't work. I can't write them a check. PayPal won't work. Like, crypto is the only way to do it. And
Yeah.
because I can do that and my competitors can't, I have a significant competitive advantage.
Right. Huge difference there.
Yeah. And I think there's you know, a missed opportunity for some people that maybe listen to this. These larger businesses, manufacturing companies, people that are located in different countries, making an onboarding and transfer and offboarding very easy for a company like that to literally just transfer money between their company, because these country barriers make it very difficult. You know, I've
Yeah.
got a manufacturing plant in Mexico. I want to send $100,000 down there. It's going
Hmm.
to take me 5 days to process that. That's 5 business days that my money's not doing anything. It's
Hmm.
not making money. It's just sitting there. And in fact, the bank is probably making money off of that. Oh, Chris, you froze for a sec. Looks like
Oh,
he's
yeah.
whistling.
Looks like his internet is finally catching up on him. But I think if you're, we moved to a new place, and so getting good solid internet is always a
Always a challenge.
challenge. But
Yep.
it's been great having Jerry jump on as well. Um,
Yes.
I mean, okay, back in 2015 when Mike Hearn did his rage quit because BTC wouldn't increase the block size. A lot of times these problems come along and then someone solves it with some sort of technology. Like, this sounds like there's now a beginning. I mean, I remember when Joseph Poon first wrote the Lightning paper, and there was all kinds of people going, yeah, this won't work, this will work, this won't work. This is like Poon's original paper. And I read the Lightning paper, I'm like, oh wow, this feels like we can finally say we don't have to increase the BTC block size to be able to do what we wanted to do. And then, like, it's now over engineered like crazy. Now, obviously, with Guardians, there's still some sort of, someone's got to sit there and look at every nook and cranny of this model and say, let's look at the security protocol. How many, how much is it going to take? If you got three Guardians and all three are compromised, because the government comes at them, right? They find out who they are, right? There's probably a lot of things, but I mean, if it's just beginning, it's great to see that there is at least another direction we can go for BTC. I'm a big BCH guy, but I've been a BTC guy before that, and I really wanted us to have a great system for peer-to-peer cash, and maybe we can get there with some privacy, maybe. Otherwise, what's going to happen? The CDBC,
Hmm.
all the talk of reparations, what's going on with reparations talk right now, right? In California, they're saying we're going to give $2 to $5 million per person who is black. That's going to cost them $14 trillion. But the problem is, as soon as you go, well, yeah, I don't know if we should do that. You know what? We're not going to do it unless you accept this CDBC, and this is where you're going to get your money. And it doesn't matter what it is, from reparations to just payments for COVID to everything. We're going to have a huge amount of issue because that's going to be so easy to use and completely not private and completely totalitarian coin. We've got to find something in
I
between that is easy to use and private.
I gotta say though, Aaron, I don't think it's going to be easy to use. I think it's going to be horrendous. I think it's going to be
What,
slow.
CDBC or Fetterman?
CBDC, like
How are they
Fed.
going to make it so damn easy? They're just going to, like, you just,
When have you seen a government program that function efficiently and easy?
well, it won't be the government doing it. They'll hire Ripple, they'll hire somebody else that already has a major platform.
They'll hire these people that
Well, dude,
will,
we're not going to win this. There's
I
no
see both
winning
of
this
these
argument.
perspectives as valid.
Yeah, so I don't want to sit there and argue this out because it's going to be, they're going to shut down our ability to do it, and they're going to lock down privacy, and they're going to bring in other things. So it doesn't even matter how big, because you don't have any other option.
Well, when you consider that the government is 25% of GDP, like government spending is 25 in the US now, which is, we're constantly breaking all-time highs. So 25% of our economic activity in the US comes directly from federal spending. And so that's 25% of our economy. So if they just started paying all the federal employees with the CBDC, and they made sure that grocery stores can accept the CBDC, that's probably all they need to do.
Yeah, but here's a problem with that. Okay, when you say 25% of the GDP is the government, it's not. That's a recycling, right? Because
Yeah, they're
they
not
don't
producing
produce
anything.
anything. Now, when in 2012, when I did an analysis of the economy and where we're at that time, 8% of the economy was manufacturing. The largest sector in the economy was healthcare. Now, healthcare also does not produce anything. It only preserves things, doesn't produce anything. That was about 25%. So you're looking at between 70 to 80% of the economy, that service sector, and you got about 8% that's actually producing stuff. And that 8% is where you actually get the rest of it. That's a huge problem, and we've been running this way through credit and stuff ever since. Now,
Oh yeah, it's not sustainable. So it's a
will
question of, does the
yeah.
economy collapse or does the CBDC come out?
Well, even if the
I
CBDC
think that's
comes
it
out,
first.
it doesn't solve the production problem. If you do not produce, you do not have anything. And so there's nothing
The
that,
incentive
People
is
still
for the
produce.
producers to switch to a different currency.
but
Yeah,
we're losing producers. That's the problem. We're losing
Yeah.
producers at a rapid rate. We aren't producing raw materials. We aren't producing oil. We aren't producing anything of value besides service sectors things, which even that's going away. Like,
Yeah. Well, this whole situation is so acute here on Decatur Island where I'm at because our economy is like, very, very tiny. And so there's a handful of people that do all the construction and all the real estate and all the handyman tasks. Like there's literally like 5 people who do all these things on the island. Everybody else is just a tourist. They're just people coming from Seattle and paying those people to do things for them. And so it's a really interesting economy, and I'm excited to see and those 5 people are all on board with the community currency that I want to start. And
that's
so
awesome.
they're all like, yeah, let's do taxes, let's keep it private, or let's do it all this under the table payment. Let's keep it private. We all know we are, and we know who does the work and who you go to for a certain type of thing that you need. And then we're gonna I mean, the current idea is to basically cut the tourists out of it. Like this is just going to be a currency for local islanders who live here for most of the year, and it unlocks economic activity and products that only we can get. And it's going to be really interesting to see, particularly like if in the future, if I get this established, say in the next year or two, and then if the U.S. dollar, something bad happens to it and inflates because of this producer problem, we'll be able to take our currency and our local currency and decouple it from the dollar fairly easily because we'll already have a foot into the crypto area. And, so there's ideas coming out like Nuon, which is inflation adjusted currency, these over collateralized loans. So you're making dollars, but ultimately they're backed by a cryptocurrency asset that is not tied to the dollar. So
Well,
you can just as easily peg it to anything else.
one of the
Right.
big problems with the price swings of cryptocurrency is usage. So the reason we can see the cryptocurrency crash so far beyond the options market, because that's one thing, but if people are using it, it will have a floor, but we don't have enough people using it to establish that floor. And it's a catch-22. We need people using it, but people don't want to use it because it fluctuates. But once you get enough people using it, you have a floor at which everybody is using it, so they're not going to sell it off because they need it to transact. We're not quite there yet, and then
I think you're making a case for ordinals.
Yeah. Then you
Because
have
people
these.
value the ability to write data directly to the blockchain.
Mm-hmm. But then you have these you have the banks that can literally print money, throw it into the system, inflate it, deflate it, inflate it, deflate it, inflate it, deflate it, which is what we've essentially been seeing. They're going in, they're going out, they're going in, they're going out. And it takes this price up and down, and it scares people away from the usage of it. And so, yeah, there's a lot of answers there, and things that need to be answered. And I think there are ways to answer it. You know, it's in, we just have to figure those things out.
This is why I'm really excited about these over collateralized loans, because they're not like a direct solution to the volatility, but if every dollar you mint is backed by $3 in this asset, then you can absorb a lot of volatility while maintaining like a steady, currency in terms of dollars. And I use that very lightly, because I like dollars are just the most convenient thing. And once that stops being a convenient thing, you still have your assets. You can just turn in all those tokens and remint them on a new token that's pegged to something else, like a better fiat currency, or like Nuon, which is more mathematically based on inflation. So yeah, I that's what I honestly like. I'm trying to find a high paying job and increase my cash flow right now, and I'm planning on putting a significant chunk of my cash flow into just buying BTC and ETH, so that I can put them into an over collateralized loan and hold the dollars. And so I have dollars if I need dollars, but otherwise I'm just going to save my money in this asset that I know is volatile, but I'm somewhat insulated from the volatility. I can even play that volatility and use it to my advantage. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, particularly once the government, the U.S. government, and have you guys been following the China's 180, that like all of a sudden, and they just released this white paper and they're endorsing Web3, and Hong Kong's ramping up. All these crypto companies are moving to Hong Kong.
Wow, I didn't see that.
No. Yeah, I think they're largely doing it just because the U.S. is coming out so strongly against it. They're like, well, if the enemy of my enemy, I guess that makes it my friend. And I mean, that's the only conclusion I can come to. They're trying to like firewall it, but promote it at the same time, just because I think they see that it could destabilize the U.S.'s economy. And so we're going to start to enter this phase of, I think we're right on the cusp of that game theory of, governments mining Bitcoin and having Bitcoin stashes. We're not there yet. Before we get to that phase, we're going to go through this next phase, which is economic warfare and central banks buying cryptos just to mess with other countries that depend on those cryptos.
Have you guys read the Agorist Primer by Sir Edwin Compton III?
I have.
Yeah. Aaron, if you haven't read it,
I got a copy of it. I think you recommended it to me.
Yeah, it's a short read. It's really good. And it kind of talks about a free society and then works backwards to an authoritarian society, but it shows like progress along the way. I actually think we're kind of heading that direction. Like this is where it's starting to head. And I think we're at a new position in history, just like the Enlightenment came about and they're like, divine right of kings, this doesn't make sense. And then they're like, okay, representational government. I think we're getting to another point, and it may not be in our lifetime, because the Enlightenment was like 100-year period, so but we could be in that period where people are starting to go, oh, there's other better ways to organize society. And we may see these wars and stuff like that. But I think we're going to start to see the rise of some of the stuff you see in the Agorist Primer, where it's like people have a free society and the government can only maintain territorial monopoly over a certain part as they get weaker and weaker. And I think we're seeing that more and more. And
I would have.
So what I really took away from.
But that's what I want to read. If you guys haven't read the beginning of Infinity, that one just blew my brain. It was David Deutsch. It's Naval Ravikant's favorite book. And I thought, well, if Naval Ravikant likes this book, and that beginning of Infinity, like, just catalyzed so many things about like how humans moved forward and all the points that we just didn't really understand. Like, how do we move away from this idea of appeal to authority, which is a big joke. I mean, if you like this book makes it so clear, like crystal clear, what a joke appeal to authority is, and how we actually moved forward in all of humanity. I mean, it's massive.
Yeah.
So
I'll
I'll
check
read
that one up.
that one is a, even if you just did the first 3 chapters, it is absolutely killer. It is absolutely blew my mind.
Cool.
It even talked about quantum computing and gave you specific examples as to how it actually works and uses the multiverse to do this shit. It's amazing. Okay, so let me just say that, and I will definitely read that Agorist Primer, because that's something I'm very interested in anyway.
And then another one is, of course, The Most Dangerous Superstition by Larkin Rose. If you guys haven't checked that one out, check it out. He's got a movie coming out called The Jones Plantation, which is an allegory for authoritarianism. And essentially, on the plantation, they tell all the slaves they're free, but if they go somewhere else, they might be enslaved. So
Oh, that's right.
they need to stay there, and everybody owns everything. And then they get to vote on who is the head of the plantation, but they only get a choice between the plantation owner and his cousin, like, kind of thing. So
Yeah, the illusion of choice. Yeah.
but the most dangerous.
What I really took away from that Agorist Primer book. Yeah. What I really took away from that Agorist Primer book is that it introduces this concept of risk management when dealing with the state. So like what examples I saw, he'd be like, okay, well, let's say you sell this thing that's illegal and the maximum penalty is 10 years and you have a 10% chance of getting caught. So that means like your cost is 1 year in prison, because it's 10% chance times 10 years in prison. So that's your cost. But if you do sell it, you'll generate this much money, and how much value will that add to your life? And this is exactly the type of risk management that a corporate treasurer would go through. But he's just taking that framework and applying it to risks of punishment from the state, and using that to justify breaking the laws consciously and intently, and with a sense of civil disobedience. And so I really appreciate that book, just because it lays those concepts down so well. And also, when I look at Argentina, that's exactly what I see. I mean, people down there in Venezuela, like, that is the only way people can feed themselves, is by making these sorts of risk adjustments. It's like, no, they don't want problems from the state, but if they want to stay alive, they have to break the law. That is the only way you can survive in these countries.
Well, it's talking about a gray market, and I would argue that we have that going on in America right now. And I talk to people all the time when they're like, young people don't want to work, nobody's in the workforce. And I say, is it that nobody's in the workforce, or nobody's in the white market workforce?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think we have a gray market that has come up, and a lot of people are working in that gray market and in different ways now, and that is bad because they can't monitor it. So the message they put out is, all the young people are lazy, nobody wants to work, nobody wants to do any of this. And so you have a whole generation that's like, oh, 50% of people pay the taxes for the other 50%, and they see that as bad thing, and they don't realize that people are working, but there's this giant gray market, whether it's the illegal immigrants they're not really illegals, because they're just people moving and working, whether it's people that come in, work under the table or whatnot. We have a giant gray market, just like in the other parts of the world. It's only, we're just told we don't. It's just people are lazy. People don't want to work,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, great conversation, guys. I think we should wrap it up. It's been an hour. I got there's like a caterpillar infestation here on the island, so I'm gonna go help my girlfriend clear up
and
garden.
I do want to clarify for anybody that's watching this afterwards, what we're saying is that there is such thing as natural law. It's wrong to steal, it's wrong to murder, it's wrong to to rape and things like that. Those are wrong, but that doesn't take an authoritarian figure to declare that those are wrong. Those are naturally wrong. And using those tactics to enforce those things and enforce other things, that is still morally wrong. So that's kind of what we're getting at here.
And crypto is rules without rulers, so it's very much in line with that idea.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So
that's why it's a beautiful thing.
All right, gentlemen.
All right, guys. Really appreciate your participation. Jerry, I appreciate your input as always. And yeah, we'll see you guys in a couple weeks for the next TSC meeting.
All right.